Yo estoy muy contento de presentaros a Denise Whitelock, porque aparte de una gran académica profesional, es una gran amiga también. Y siempre que viene a nuestra ciudad, que además le encanta venir a Barcelona, nosotros estamos contentos de poderla acoger aquí, ¿no? Ella es directora del Instituto de Tecnología Educativa de la Open University del Reino Unido. Ella es profesora de aprendizaje mediado por la tecnología durante más de 25 años. Tiene experiencia en el uso de la inteligencia artificial para el diseño, la investigación y la evaluación del aprendizaje basado en el ordenador y online, especialmente en el ámbito de la educación superior. En estos momentos ella está liderando un proyecto de investigación e innovación sobre lo que se llaman las competencias para la prosperidad, que está financiado por el gobierno de Kenia e intenta proveer a nivel, digamos, general, oportunidades de aprendizaje a distancia cualitativamente importantes, y está formando a 320 personas que son staff de 37 universidades públicas en ese país. Ella también participó y lideró la parte británica del proyecto TESLA, el Adaptive Trust and Assessment System for Learning, un proyecto que empezó a trabajar todo el tema de la evaluación online y la utilización de los medios tecnológicos para conseguir desarrollar un sistema de evaluación que asegurase la autentificación y la autoría, la identificación y la autoría en entornos mixtos y en entornos online de los estudiantes, a la vez que intentábamos superar las constricciones físicas y temporales en los exámenes que se hacen online y que por lo tanto se dejaban de hacer presencialmente. También contribuyó al proyecto europeo CODUR, del cual yo estuve liderando, y fue un trabajo conjunto muy interesante para desarrollar medidas y sobre todo métricas de calidad de la educación online para integrarlas en los rankings universitarios existentes, en particular en el U Multirank, que era uno de los rankings europeos que en ese momento estaba funcionando de forma también más segmentada. Después el Times Higher Education también ha utilizado algunas de las métricas que salieron como resultado de este proyecto. Bien, además está trabajando en el ámbito del Reino Unido, es miembro de la Higher Education Commission, por lo tanto está vinculado a un montón de programas, a un montón de actividades, es miembro de muchos comités de programa que sobre todo se focalizan sobre el uso de la tecnología para la educación, en particular para la evaluación, y es editora de distintos forma parte del consejo editorial de distintas revistas y en particular es la editora de la revista Open Learning desde 2018. Ella ha recibido también reconocimientos como profesora visitante en la Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona y en la British University en Dubái. Ha sido miembro del Consejo de Gobierno de la Society for Research into Higher Education durante 9 años en el Reino Unido y actualmente es la vicepresidenta de investigación de EDEN, el European Distance and E-Learning Network, Digital Learning Europe, y es fellow de la Academia de Ciencias Sociales del Reino Unido y también es chair de la Commonwealth of Learning desde abril de 2023. Por lo tanto, veis que tiene una trayectoria importante, es una persona que sabe de lo que habla, y eso es muchas veces lo más importante, más allá, digamos, de los títulos que tiene cada uno, y por lo tanto yo le voy a hacer la palabra. We are very happy, Denise. I tried to do a short summary of your excellent trajectory in the professional field. We know that you are an expert person in use of technology in education and particularly in assessment, and that we have worked together in several projects, and we are very happy for that because they have been very successful projects. And we are eager to listen to you this morning. So please, the floor is yours.
So, learning analytics, we're in I think, a stage of transition. So I'm going to give some examples of what we've been doing. But also, I think my thesis today is that with AI coming, and it can do so much more than I could do, and I'm going to show you some of my own work, than we could do before quite easily. But what I think we need to concentrate on is to move forward with the feedback we give to staff and students, and to give students more control. So that's the take-home message of the presentation this morning. I'm from the Institute of Educational Technology, and we have 3 major areas of research and work that we undertake for the university. Our areas of research, we move that research into our curriculum, and it's our master's, so it's experimental. And in fact, we were one of the first departments to set up a master's using some micro-credentials. And then we've got the quality enhancement and innovation section, and this is where our learning analytics sits. Let's start with a definition of learning analytics. Here's the one from the SOLA, the Society of Learning Analytics, and Bart Rientes is actually the president this year. So here we've got a formal definition: the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data to understand and optimize learning. But what does, we have lots of formal definitions. What does this really mean? So what we're saying is, let's try and identify some patterns in our analysis, in the data. Let's try and make sense of those patterns and then use them to support student learning. So where have we been in the last 10 years? And if you look at this paper, it talks about learners, equality, faculty, and institutions. And on the right-hand side, you'll see some boxes in blue. And this is where I've assessed where we are at the Open University. So we really are supporting access and inclusion, and I'm going to show you some of that data. So equality, diversity, and inclusion is very important. And I do believe that learning analytics is helping us progress in this area. We are improving our pedagogy with what we know. And this is important to us with, 200,000 students, and with a lot of, we've got, I think, up to 6,000 associate lecturers who actually mark the scripts, who talk with the students. And of course, from that, we're starting to identify good practice, and we're able to share that, and I'm going to show you some of that as well. So these are the opportunities, but what about the challenges? I do believe ethics and privacy is still very, very important. Now, the OU was one of the first to set up an ethics policy. We did that in 2014. We're getting more on top of the data governance, and we're adapting and using the outputs. We're number 1 in Europe and number 2 in the world in this area, and where we're weak is we've got good evidence about a module, but now we've moved to qualifications that understanding across qualifications needs more work. This is Hendrik Dreckler's team, who have put forward these 7 principles for ethics. I do think they're on the right track, but I'd like to highlight commitment to continual training. That's very important because things are moving very fast. How can we expect people who are at the chalk front with our students? They need to be trained, and we need to keep ourselves updated in this field to maximize student success, especially with our students who are learning at a distance. So let me tell you about this exciting project. This is OU Analyze. Now, like any good project, and it was using machine learning 10 years ago. It started 10 years ago with research monies and is now really come to fruition. It takes a long time. Maybe at UOC you are quicker at moving things into with your students. But at the OU it takes a while to get things to go mainstream. This is an early alerts system using machine learning. It identifies students at risk and is now being rolled out. The VC has publicly rolled this out, and I'll let you know what we're finding and why it's being effective. It's won lots of prizes, and of course when they go abroad or speaking somewhere else has to cheer up the team. So this is for my team, saying how good they are. And another point about that is sometimes a prophet's not recognized in his own land. But when you tell everyone at home, this is what we've won, everybody's recognizing us, it makes it easier to move things along. Now, what does this do? There's 2 parts to it. The first part uses machine learning, and it's predictive about whether a student will put in their assignment. Now, the second part uses regression analysis and is a more long-term about whether the student will actually pass the course. So this is important information that's just going to the tutors, the associate lecturers. And because of so many students like yourselves, over a long period of time, we had lots of data that we could deal with. And what it does, as you can see on the side, is on the right-hand side, it's plotting what the student's doing on the VLE and their activity. And here's the dashboard. The first dashboard to the left, you can see 2 red dots. So that's telling the tutor that those are the 2 students in this cohort that are at risk of not submitting their assignments. And the short-term predictions, you can move first to the first right, and then the long-term propensity of success. So it's giving the tutors immediate feedback about what their students are doing online. We have it took us, a while, but we've been able to publish our results, and I'm going to leave you with the references in another slide. But what's more important is the pass rates and also with the ethnic minority students. So this has been a big plus for the university, and of course, every time a student drops out, this means the business loses money. And that means we can employ less associate lecturers and less people. And the vibrancy of the place also deteriorates with less students. So, does it really things get better for students? Now, we did a study, Thea Haradutu with Bart did this study with 59 of our associate lecturers. And these are the student characteristics that they looked at. But the most important predictor was best previous score. And the teacher characteristics, because when we started this, the teachers didn't have to use it, it was voluntary, is the usage itself. And the course design didn't play a big role here in this particular study. How does it help the students? So here's a test, here's an experiment where we've looked at a group of students, teachers. They did the course without OU Analyze and then with it. No observable difference to the variation in academic ability, but the big thing was student performance when the tutors used OU Analyze. So we were, as far as we can in education, looking at like with like, but using this made a big difference to student performance. Now, how did it affect the tutors who used it? That's a big question. So those who were always checking, it made their job a bit easier, but they were able to systematize regularly what they did. And those who hadn't used it, weren't used to working in that way, it influenced them. And in some ways, they said, gave them permission to contact the students. I know that sounds a bit strange, but you know when you're working at a distance, and since COVID, when we've all been at a distance for a while, it just influenced their practice. So the big thing that's affecting us and is very important in our regulatory system is our BAME students increasing their passing. And for us, using this and those students improving is a big marker. So, as I said to you, learning analytics shouldn't just be for staff, although this has proved to be very effective. In my opinion, we need to give our students more control. They need to see what's happening and how they are viewed with their work. So they're given, facts about how they are progressing and what they're doing. Because you know yourself, if you're a student, you can fool yourself. So what we did is we had looked at with 20 students points that they wanted on a dashboard, and they'd seen the other dashboards. So they wanted to know their scores. They wanted to know how they were interacting, but also the course materials that they'd accessed. And when everything's online, sometimes it's difficult to keep track of all of that. And they wanted recommendations about the material, what they should go and look at, and contact information, who they should contact. So we came up with this type of dashboard so that they can monitor their own progress. And it's for them to take action. The more you take action and feel confident to take action, then the more successful you'll be as a student. And here's a list of our publications, which we'll leave with you. Now, what I've been talking about really is encompassed in this diagram. So we've got a VLE, an LMS system. Students are interacting. Data is being passed on, and we've got to be careful with data privacy and our ethics. We've got our data mining, our analytics going on, feeding into a dashboard to the teacher. And of course, we can change, the teacher reflects, can change, and the students can change, and we've seen that. But what on earth is going on in the course materials? This is some work we did with my student, which I had with Bart, Kwan Neugen, and we actually looked at the activities that the students were undertaking. And the red line shows you how much time they're spending and when they're spending it online. Immediately you can see activity increases when there's assessment. So the reds matching the blues, yeah? And much of the work they're doing is assimilative. Not a lot of interactive activity. So what can we take from that? Well, what they do is up to us. And that leads me on to what should they be doing to actually maximize their success. This is an interesting paper by Barbara Wason, and it's Paul Kashner. They were talking about learning analytics and learning design. The magic of learning design, bringing it together. So what you know about what the students do and how we can maximize their success. Now, this is a European project, ELED, which Bart is leading in the UK. It's got, I think, 12 European partners, and they're building a learning design system. And you can see some of the outputs here from teaching entrepreneurial competences. And here's a plug for Bart. Get your free account. And it's very interesting to have a look and see what people are actually doing and how it's changing the way people are thinking about learning design, especially in COVID, whereas we're from e-learning universities who are used to learning design, and others who don't. So they've had, to date, 16,000 users, 30 countries, and they've looked at 1,500 courses. The forms you fill in onto the course about your activities, etc., are very simple to use and were developed in a previous project, the Repeat project. So one of my things is always about feedback. So you can look at the feedback, look at the assessment and how that balances out, because you put the facts in and it will give you the analysis, and then how the assessment matches the learning outcomes. So using a tool like this, how can we improve the feedback and then the curriculum and the way we present those materials to the student? So these are the details of the project, and the most important thing here is that actually in all this data they've only found 4 common learning design activities: generating independent learning, traditional classroom activities, assessment, and collaboration. And what they want to do next is to include AI for automatic recommendations. So that moves me on to the next part of the course of this presentation, where I'm really concerned about feedback for effective learning. So how do we know that the feedback in these dashboards, and these dashboards get more and more complicated. I'm sure you have them here. The university's telling you X, Y, and Z. You've got to go find the right dashboard with the right cohort. And sometimes it's not easy to read. So one of our doctoral students, Anne Gillespie, did some eye tracking with looking at the dashboards. And the green dots show where the eyes are, so they go to the top graphs first, and then are looking at, red dots. There's a highlight here, something to look at. But the thing that came through clearly in this study was, okay, I can see this, there's a problem here, but what do I do about it? So recommendations and hints seem to be what are required to help people through if they're to be effective. Right, because I want to talk about effective feedback and I want to talk about AI, I want to give you an example of something that I've done with natural language processing. So this is just a very simple sentence. The purple is the introduction, the red is like the conclusion sentence, and if we make a graph using a cosine rule, you can see how related those sentences are to one another. And what I did is I put in a pretend essay, 10 identical paragraphs. And the colours of the rainbow there represent introduction, which is violet, conclusion red, and the other dots, colours of the rainbow, represent the surrounding text. And you get this more aesthetically pleasing representation with 50 identical sentences. But this is interesting. This is a Stanford Booth prized essay. This is an excellent essay where the introduction, the conclusion, and the supporting evidence are all tightly together. In fact, it's coherent. This is one of our essays with a high grade. Now, the conclusion and the introductions, those are close together. Some of the evidence is coalescing and cohering, but there are spurious parts here. And this is a low grade. So this was a spin-off from another project, Open Essayist, but of course we found this at the end. Unexpectedly, we weren't looking for this. So what we did is we gave people 2 essays to write, and then we put them through, made the rainbow diagrams, asked other people, another group, to mark, to use our coding scheme, which was, you know, what a low grade looked like and a high grade, medium grade, and to rank them. And we found that just looking at this, you could not assign a grade, but could say high, medium, or low, not a mark, couldn't assign a mark. In fact, FutureLearn were interested in developing this for MOOCs and other things that weren't credit-bearing, but unfortunately we sold FutureLearn, so that didn't go ahead. But the point I want to make is about the feedback, is this. So let me come over here. So coherence, do things fit together? Is the introduction telling you what it's about? Is the core of the text supporting and making the story that you want to tell with evidence? Is the conclusion then telling you what the inferencing should be? So here's the introduction. Here's the conclusions. This is the main text. And you can find the words in the text themselves. I'll go back. Okay, sorry. Thank you. So the point I'm trying to make is, how do you then communicate the coherence of your essay to the student themselves in a simple way? And also, you see, you can go to where those points are, and it will come up in your text, and you can change the text, rearrange it, and see how coherent it is. So although we've done the analytics, and we can tell, we could give a rough grade, how can we make the students in control? Because writing a coherent story is difficult. It's difficult for us sometimes when we're writing journal articles, let alone the students, who sometimes don't even know what that means, what really a good story is. So this, and we, Open Essayist, gave students feedback on their draft essays because there was no help from the their tutors, and the main way we did this was by summarization. So we summarized the draft, showed them the summarization. This is based on past conversation theory, because if I understand something you've told me, I can say it back to you. So the machine was acting, saying back what the person had written, and to see if they could check if that's what they thought they should be doing. And the students who used it got better grades. Artificial intelligence, yes, it's here to stay. But it's only a statistical model, as I showed you with the links, yeah? In the coherence diagrams. And applied statistics isn't quite such a sexy term as artificial intelligence. Of course, it can produce rapid text. It can summarize quickly, not as well as Open Essayist did, but it's getting better, but it hallucinates. That's a very posh term for lying. And of course, it generates wonderful references that look so right and of course aren't at all. But it's the thing that's problematic for us, it's amoral and biased. So where are we going to go with generative AI and learning analytics? It will be able to find patterns quickly. I think it will help us build recommender systems. and it can highlight and give feedback with audio and visual representation. We know we're going to have I'm working on an avatar at the moment who can give feedback in psychology, on methods. We'll be able to interrogate the feedback. But I think what's more important is to give much more control to the users. And this all sounds wonderful, but if we're not in control and we're not using sound pedagogy and using that and refreshing what we know, then the systems will take over. And that's not really what we want. We want to use sound pedagogy, but I think there's opportunity now for us to create new theories. But of course, like any presentation, any work, if it's good, you're left with more questions than you've got answers. So, you know, what is the effect of different LA feedback types for effective learning? What is the relevant data we need to collect to affect student outcomes? Now, of course, we're moving forward into a space now where emotions can be recognized by cameras. So we should be able to give effective feedback to our students through this. So what do we really need to collect? When our students are doing well, is it just because they're stressed, because life is getting in the way? Things happen, and they always happen to you when you're doing a PhD. All the students it happened to me, so things happen. But also, what is their reaction to the feedback and how it should be given? So here's my research agenda for learning analytics. Ethics needs revisiting. Models of feedback. We need to look into models of feedback with AI tools, the integration of those tools. But data analytics literacy for students and teachers, and investigate these multimodal models where we're going to be able to intuit affect. But if we're going to give the students more control and we're going to roll this out, we live in a very privileged way in Europe. What about Africa and everything else? Now, in Africa, some of them have the best networks, and they're able to trade using, sell their goods on their mobile phones. Shouldn't we be thinking about mobile delivery of this feedback? But I'm going to leave you with my grand challenge. It's always my grand challenge, whatever I'm looking at. And that's, what does it mean to assess human learning that can be readily understood by students and teachers, and then move our students forward? Thank you for listening.
Si tenéis alguna pregunta, entonces ahora se la podemos hacer.
I think this last part is still, we are still thinking how to integrate AI in our research agendas in general. So it's interesting to have your thoughts about that. But my question is more concrete. You were mentioning the advantages that your system for helping teachers, the OU analyze.
Yeah.
So the evidence that teachers that were using it did it better, no? For saying it. So my question is, were you able to integrate OUA into the teacher's practice somehow? So was it, because I think one of the problems is not about literacy, it's also about how you enable teachers to have time and to have a task that relates to use learning analytics with their work, no? That's how do you?
What made it successful, and that's successful, was the workshops with the teachers who'd used it and passed that expertise on to their peers. And we had discussion groups when they first used it, so they came together. What was the best way? How did it affect you? That's how we found out that some systematized how they looked at what they were doing with the students. Others who didn't actually communicate too much between assignments started to. So it takes time in small groups with the users talking to each other, not guidelines or anything else. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. I think for our group it's a very good umbrella, academic umbrella, and I think there are a lot of things that we work on together. But for us, a very important thing is how the students use the analytics. For us, it's for the future, but I want to know what is your idea. How the students can use the analytics in a very ethical way and critical way. Because we think it's more easy to make this use with the teachers, but how to improve the use of the analytics for the students, but in a very critical and ethical way. How to do that, or how do you think we can do that?
Yeah, we showed that dashboard that they all agreed on. They want to know their marks, their assignments. They want to know their activity and they want to know what the materials they've accessed. So I think that's, when we spoke to them, they really weren't clear about what they had accessed. They felt, and then when they saw that they'd only done stuff that was for the assignment, which we all do, they were quite surprised they hadn't, and as the time goes on, they hadn't actually read around maybe enough for the final assignment. So also, they didn't make this explicit, but what we believe they were doing as well with the dashboard was assessing the amount of effort they needed to pass. So a lot of our students are working, they're in jobs, so they can see a pattern about if they can see where their marks are and it's all in one place and what they're doing. They do work out how much they need to do. We know that. Smart students do that. But they can then start to judge that if they know I've got a very busy period of work, how I can adapt what I'm doing to match that, to maybe get a lower mark here when I won't put in so much effort. So it's about judging where they are, helping them with facts, with what they've really been doing, not what they think they've been doing, but what's been recorded, so that they can adapt and put themselves on a path of success with the effort that's needed. But we need more research on this, and we've only just started to do this. But I think when you're in control and you feel you're in control of your work, then you can do better. It's when it's out of hand, I don't feel I'm in control. But if I know that I just do this, I can just about pass, then, you know, you're going to stay on the course and not drop out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Denise, for your presentation. A lot of information. I've been trying to connect some of them, doing a fast analytics.
Sorry, it was too much.
No, that was great. I saw that a very interesting number regarding what students are doing based on what teachers are proposing them to do. It was around 70% of the work is related to that. Then I was wondering if you can share with us some results of that experience of how analytics may also help teachers in raising awareness of what they are designing with this project about pedagogical approaches and the use of learning design in you. So, because it's very important, if they are doing what we are asking them to do, it's better that we propose very interesting things to do, actually, and be conscious. So this part of also analytics is supporting learning design decision and raising awareness regarding what we are proposing our students. If you can comment something on that, or I will read these documents, I've been taking notes of that.
The primary effect of this project is with teachers who are not in an e-learning space, not in a digital space, and to see really what's going on in what they are actually producing, not what the team, because when we're face-to-face, a team doesn't produce it. They don't have high-quality materials like we have with a team producing it. But the thing that's come over when the workshops have been run with Bart is a lack of interactivity in the teaching, and how that could be improved. And even in our own work, there's a lot of assimilation, a lot of reading. Well, students do that on their own anyway, but more interactivity. I know there's polling going on in face-to-face, some interactivity, but it's to see where the balance is as well. Where is the balance? Is it all assessment? What types of assessment? And people have been quite surprised when they've put in what they were doing. So they've had another group that are using it for planning, and their planning is changing as they're getting feedback about what they've put in. So it's the dynamic nature that is changing what is happening. And of course, it's very easy when you've got the system, you just type in another number and you can see. Whereas, if you were drawing that or just had a spreadsheet, it would be more difficult to do. So what will be interesting is the longer term effects of actually planning. Whereas in face-to-face universities, this hasn't been the case. So we'll look forward to hearing and seeing what happens. But this is definitely going to have a big effect in Europe with all these countries involved and changing the digital ecosystem. And I believe there will be more funding for systems like this in the future.
Hi. Thank you very much for the brilliant work and Thank you very much for the brilliant work and for your brilliant summarization and condensing the message in such a short time. I have a very basic question that I might condensing all this information in such a short time, I might lose some of the information. But at the beginning of your presentation, you were saying that basically this system works for like improving the experience of the students, whether there is no significant statistical significant effect on the learnings, on the outcomes.
they're at risk.
Yeah.
From the activity, the system says this student's at risk, it's not going to give in the assignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, like, the question is how the generalization of these findings. I mean, this experiment was done in 2020 on a limited number of students, I suppose. So how
No,
much do you believe-
65% now of this 65% usage now of this system with the same effect. But as I went through the BAME work, the students at low socioeconomic status and BAME students, that was done in 22 and showing 6.8% increases and 10% increases. So this has come later with larger numbers.
Okay, but how much do you think is given by like selection bias of this of the students basically that are selected into this program, and how much is like the truly effect of this program?
Yeah, the students don't select. It's the faculty selecting the use on their courses.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
But as we've got 68% using it now, I think the bias is not important
Okay.
in the final data.
Okay. And how much do you think this could be scaled up, like in other contexts, in other, like?
Well, the problem is you could do it here, but you would have to use some machine learning on you'd have all your own activities. So we know with certain courses what the activity is like and whatever. We've looked at it back over, 20 years. So it's it'll be easier to do because you can learn from our mistakes. But there aren't many universities who could do it because if they're not digital and have a history of learning design, knowing what the students are doing, whatever, I think it would be much more problematic. But who knows with moving forward with AI, because we might be able to form some simple rules over asking the system to look for X, Y, and Z with a large number of data and see if we could find a pattern quickly. But I'm not sure how quickly that could happen. But in theory, it could.
Okay, so I would like just to ask you a short question, because maybe I'm going out beyond the topic we're discussing today. But regarding the learning analytics applied to students, you talk about the need of literacy, of using LA for the students. But it should be linked to the self-regulation process of the students in that extent?
Yes, I agree, Albert, but when I'm talking about literacy, I'm talking about how that feedback is delivered. Now, you read the journals, all of you. Do you ever trust any text around a graph or a table? I never do. And I'm an editor, so I always read. I always look at the data myself. So people interpreting data, especially if it's very important to you, that I've only got a couple of days to do something, what should I do? I think we need to have literacy which involves text, graphs, other visualizations, and maybe interactive visualizations, because the data is becoming more complicated, how we present it. And I think for staff as well. It's because if you make, it's a bit like a medic, isn't it? If you read the data wrong, you might give the wrong pill to somebody. But we've so much to learn, and it's very exciting.
Thank you so much.